Hello and welcome to episode 24 of No Time to Cry. We're your hosts. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Laura.
And we're back together, guys.
Woo!
How it's supposed to be. Yeah, I'm feeling a lot better. I'm not 100%. I'm still a little bit husky, so bear with me if there's a little coughs in there. But yeah, it's nice to be back in the same room, spending time together, isn't it?
I know. It's just not been the same, has it?
No, and do you know what? It's one of those where there will be a couple more episodes like that, but Laura will have her mic with her this time, which will make the quality a lot better. Just because we're going to have a couple of people on, and the people that we want to talk to are either all around the country or not in this country, which means that we can't do it in person. But there's definitely loads for us to be doing, and it's super exciting the kind of different direction that the podcast is taking. And we've spoke to some really incredible people in the last couple of weeks who want to engage with us and come on the podcast, which I think will be great for you guys. This episode, we wanted to dedicate a little bit more on terms of how you get yourself back. So I think we've spoke previously about feeling like you've lost a version of yourself or lost yourself completely when you're going through grief or a hard time. And the reason we always caveat that and say it's not just the loss of someone, it could be any significant event in your life. I think Laura spoke to it a little bit, feeling that actually after giving birth as well, and losing like a variation of yourself. And we want to give some helpful tips rather than just acknowledging that that's kind of what happens, is maybe some helpful ways to try and get some variation of yourself back. And I don't think that you fully ever go back to how you were pre whatever it is that's happened to you, because I think naturally you change as a person, so it'd be weird if you went back completely. But definitely just getting comfortable kind of feeling that like remnants of who you are as a person and who you are deep down and how you kind of recover it. So yeah, I mean, why did you want to talk about that, Law?
I think it's quite an interesting topic that a lot of people can relate to. And actually, when we did the episode to talk about positive and negative changes as a result of loss in yourself, we had quite a few messages, didn't we?
Yeah.
To say, oh, actually, yeah, I feel like I lost a part of my identity, who I am, because of course if you lose a parent or a partner or a loved one or anyone significant in your life, ultimately if they had a big impact on you, it's very likely that you feel as though you're constantly missing
Yeah.
a part of yourself, because naturally that sort of went with them. So we wanted to expand on what parts of ourselves do we think we lost as a result of losing our parents, and if we've managed to regain any of those things, and equally, are there any things that we haven't been able to and we think will be sort of more of a permanent change and adjustment? And
For now, anyway.
For now, yeah.
Because I think that's what's important. It's like, just because we've not got that part back doesn't mean that we won't do, but also some of it's an active choice. Like,
yeah, true.
I think some of we've spoke about before that we're maybe not as people pleaser like as we used to be prior to losing our parent, and that's not something that I would want to go back
No,
to.
so that's why we said it. It's a bizarre concept to think about positive change as a result of loss, but obviously we're not talking about anything positive associated to losing that person, because obviously it's just it's an indescribable pain that you never really get fully past. But it does change your perspective, your outlook, how you deal with certain things, how you handle certain scenarios and situations. And like you say, Shan, I think that's a really positive thing, because you suddenly realize what's so important in life. And I think you hold things so much more dearly. You're way more conscious of every small interaction that you have with people, and even those daft things that people say to you when at the time, well, you think it's daft, it's not. You know, people take tomorrow for granted, and you just never know that that's actually going to be something that you're guaranteed.
Yeah. And as we've been talking then, it just reminded me of something that Wes, who was the guest that I had on while she was on holiday, said he spoke about that when his dad passed away, or his granddad, who he calls dad, he completely fell out of love with playing rugby.
Yeah.
And that was because there was such a connection between his rugby career and his dad that some of the joy of what he loved and got him out of a very difficult phase of his life, he lost it
I
because his dad
understand
wasn't
that.
there.
It's so sad that, because I suppose you think if that's something that he always enjoyed and experienced with his dad, it feels as though you almost feel like guilty for
Yeah,
continuing that without them. But then I suppose it's thinking about in the future, is it possible that you can still continue that in some small way, shape, or form to honour them and
yeah.
to sort of continue that enjoyment and that journey that you would have experienced together. But it's looking at it from a different kind of perspective, isn't it?
I
And
think it changes your relationship with whatever that is. It might
yeah,
not stop you from doing it, but it might feel different forever, or for at least a period of time, like the feelings that you have
because it's
towards
not
it.
normal, is it? I suppose with the rugby,
No.
you'd always be buying 2 tickets, you'd be getting 2 pints,
Yeah.
you'd be, who's driving today, who's not. It's the
Yeah.
planning of getting there, of being there, of whatever you do sort of afterwards, the logistics of things, that you enjoy planning and getting
Yeah.
excited
Well, I
for.
think like for his whole career as like a rugby player as well, like his dad was that person that gave him like consistent constructive
Of course, yeah.
feedback as well. So he was kind of saying, like I lost that side as well. I lost the being able to have a pint with him afterwards. He was always the first one there and the last one to leave.
A
Like he was,
debrief of the game and
yeah,
all.
but also everybody else in the team knew who he was and had a relationship with him regardless of where he was playing at the time, because his dad had such a role in his career.
That's where I think one day, and obviously maybe not right now, and it's totally understandable for Wes that it's still so raw, and it might be for a very long time too, which is also absolutely fine and okay. But there must be at some point, I guess, an opportunity of comfort to speak to other people at the rugby who probably thought a lot of his dad
Yeah,
and could talk about memories with him. Oh, do you remember that time at this
yeah,
match? Do you remember this? And I think, it's nearly 3 years now since I lost mum, and I don't think probably a year in, or even 2 years, I would have found comfort in that.
no.
But I do now. I do feel like now when
Mm.
people say, "Oh, remember when your mum did this?" or somebody shares a story with me about my mum, it makes me laugh and it makes me smile, and it brings some joy
Yeah.
to how I feel versus, oh gosh, like I don't want to be reminded again that my mum isn't here. So
And that's probably like one of the tips that I would say, like, and it does come with different time periods and how you're feeling, that allows you to find joy in something again, is
yeah,
like
exactly.
by talking about it and sharing memories. And I think we've said like a few times that when people say, they stop asking you about your person that you've lost, if that be your partner, your mum, your dad, your sister, your brother, whoever it is, it does make that harder to find those connections back to yourself, because naturally a big part of you is the people that you are surrounded by, and when someone's missing and then they're never spoken of again, it makes it harder for you to get back to a variation of yourself, because it's almost like everybody's ignoring the elephant in the room,
Exactly, yeah.
which is a big part of who you are. So
That's the difference of that though, isn't it? I think eventually if you are able to do something that you did share together and so many other people observed that and were there to experience that with you,
mm,
you're always going to get people that will say
yeah.
things about that loved one because it's just a natural thing, isn't it?
Sometimes I get worried about what
Oh
people
God,
say about
yeah.
my dad. Some of the tales, I'm like, are we sure this is for my ears?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
do I need to
Yeah.
hear this one? Like, are we certain that this is something I'm going to want to know about? But no, I agree. I think it's, and I've spoke about it. Like, there's certain areas of my life where I feel a gap now. Like, I still, if I'm completely honest, like I've got a real passion for like drawing and painting and things like that, and I have barely done any of that since my dad died. And
No, you haven't.
I don't know if there's like a direct correlation to my dad passing and me not like drawing as much or whatever. I've done a little bit, like I've started paintings. I tried to do a painting of my dad actually for one of my uncles because we'd spoke about it, and I got like halfway through and I don't know, I can't really go back to it. I don't know what it is about it. Like I don't know, there's like maybe a lack of connection to it, or maybe it's like not, maybe it was too soon after he passed from when I started it.
Because it still
Um
hasn't really been that long, Shan. I think
no,
that's the
it's
other
just over
side, isn't it?
2 years, isn't it? So,
Yeah,
but
it's
when
still.
I started it, it was like over a year ago now that I started that painting. I've like not touched it probably in like a year.
Mm.
But yeah, I think there is a certain creative side of me that definitely comes from my dad. And I feel like that creative side of me, if listen, I don't know 100%. I don't know that it's all down to my dad passing away or the fact that, I've got a different job or I've done like, and I'm not as free at that like now as I was when I used to before my dad passed away. Um but yeah, I don't know. I feel like that may be something, there's something around that in terms of me not connecting to it as much because he is someone that for my whole entire life probably pushed me, inspired me to paint more, draw more, do
It
more.
makes sense though, because obviously painting is such a creative form of kind of like escapism, I suppose, and you need inspiration to paint. I
Mm,
suppose you need to be able to have a vision in your head in terms of what you want to
yeah.
paint, and ultimately if the last thing you painted was your dad and you felt like you weren't able to complete it, that might be something like subconsciously that's
Yeah,
stopping
and
you from
I think what
going back to it.
what I like I've literally nearly just finished one actually, which has taken me forever, which is of a friend's cat. Unfortunately, like a lot of the time when I'm asked to do paintings or I do paintings for people is because their pet or person has passed away. So like the
Yeah.
cat, for instance, I they didn't ask me to do that. I started painting them because they lost their cat. Um and I feel like it's sometimes my way of like being able to offer some peace in a very different like manner in terms of I do very realistic paintings. So
And they're beautiful, and I think, they're so comforting. It's similar to when people that maybe have a wedding or a christening or something like that, that's
mm,
kind of a life-changing event and that a loved one can't be there at, and there's family pictures, and you see,
yeah,
artists nowadays are that talented and capable of being able to
which is what
insert
I've done.
AI
Yeah, so
driven
like
images in pictures, aren't they?
I
So
don't do I like mine's not AI, but I do a lot of digital painting, so I use like Procreate and stuff like that. So it's the same as painting and drawing like on paper. You just use like a digital pen and then you can select what brush you use. But a lot of the paintings I've done have been like, oh, here's a picture with me and my baby, but my mum passed away. Can you paint this picture of my mum and this? So it's not like a photograph, it is a painting. And I've done dogs and I've done this like, gosh, a couple of years ago, I did a painting of 3 dogs. Two of the dogs had passed away. And whilst I was doing the painting, the third dog died. It was
gosh.
honestly so maybe that's like some of
What you do is associated to loss then, isn't it?
yeah, a lot of
So
the time, a lot of the paintings that, and not always, I've painted like babies and I've done one of Sienna, haven't I, and things like that. But a lot of the time, a lot of the paintings that I do are sort of like driven around loss, which was never intentional, but like
it must conjure up a lot of sad feeling though, because naturally it's an
sometimes,
emotional thing, isn't it?
yeah, sometimes. I think I have a lot more preference in terms of like painting people's like pets if they pass away or just their pets in general. I think because I love my pets so much, um it's like a little, and I feel like people don't grieve pets as well as they do family members, and like people don't expect you to grieve as hard like when you lose a pet as they do like if you
Even though
lost
they're
like,
just as much a part of your
oh,
family as
100%. I would be like really, really upset if I lost Bobby or Paddington. But for me, it's like I suppose I feel a lot more sentiment towards that in terms of like being able to give someone like a little bit of a slice of like memory associated to that pet, and it's I suppose a lot easier for me to do that maybe from where people, and also people are really hard to paint, guys. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's a lot harder, but yeah, I don't know. It's like that's definitely probably my biggest area that I think
You've lost at the moment.
I've lost and not really gained back. I think um naturally we've gone into loads of detail around just like health and fitness and things like that previously, where I lost a bit of like love in terms of self-care, and I've gained that back now, and I gained that back probably within like 6 months of my dad passing away. So they were like temporary, I would
Yeah.
say, like versions of myself that I didn't get back. Whereas that I've always been a very, very creative person. And I feel like I'm expressing creativity in different ways.
It'll come back though.
I think
I'm really
so.
confident it will, but I think the timing element with that I think is very important.
Yeah. And I think I need to, for a while, I was doing a lot of like commissions. So like
Mm.
painting like requests. I was like basically it's a bit of a side hustle. I was like painting and getting like extra money and stuff for doing that. Um and I think the pressure of that is just something I'm not prepared to take on
It's
right
a
now.
lot. I think, especially considering you've got quite a lot of big life events happening in tandem.
I
So
don't do things by half, guys.
it's just that you don't, maybe you just don't even have the capacity as well in terms of being
Yeah.
able to sit down and to have that freedom, because you might be spending that on the house at the moment or the wedding.
Yeah, well
And
it's like there's a lot of creative like design stuff I suppose that I'm spending time on, whether it be editing the podcast, doing the creative for that, planning a wedding, thinking
exactly,
about
yeah,
flowers, dresses, bridesmaids
you put in
dresses,
that creative
whatever.
energy elsewhere at the
Yeah,
moment. So I do
designing a
think
house.
there's a
Oh.
big element of that. So
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if
I
it
think it
comes
will
back.
come
I'm
back.
not like, listen, it's not like I'm sat here going, I'm devastated I've lost that part of myself, because I think I have some confidence that I'm in control of that. If I want to get back into it, I will when I'm ready. And I've dipped my toe. Like I said, I've started painting for a friend, which I started months and months ago, but there's no pressure for me to finish it at a certain time because it was just something that I said,
You
you
wanted
know,
to do it.
yeah, and I didn't even ask them, to be honest. I just started it and then said, by the way, I hope you don't mind, but I've just started like painting your cat, like as,
It's so
and I'll
lovely.
get it printed for you and stuff like that when I'm ready. But I also think it would be good for them to have a bit of time between when I started that and their cat had passed away a couple of weeks before, to actually when I print it, it might, a bit of healing time between receiving it
I get
and
that.
things like that. Because obviously, like when I told them, they got upset. They were obviously made up. I
Yeah,
showed them the
yeah.
first like bit of it, but literally burst into tears. So I also think
Completely
it'll be nice just
understand.
to let a little bit of time kind of process and go through. But yeah, I think that's just probably the area that maybe comes to the top of my head. I think we've spoke a little bit about personality traits and stuff like that before, and I'm definitely a different version of myself, but there's no part of me that I lost from a personality perspective that I want back.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? I wonder if
Yeah.
that's the same for a lot of people, or if there are some differences we'd love to hear
Yeah.
and to know. But I'm trying to think if there's anything that I feel like I've lost that I'm also comfortable with the fact I've lost, and I'm sort
Mm.
of at peace with it, and I'm happy that that's changed. I think one of the things that I'm a bit more conscious of now, that I've lost, which I don't necessarily know if I want back, but maybe at some point in my life, my decision on that will change. But I think I'm a lot more conscious now of the company I keep. I think you're a bit more conscious of who you surround yourself with,
What
um,
energy they give you.
what energy they give you, whether you're, you know, it could be that you're not supposed to be in their life at that time as well, in terms of being super close. And I'm not saying that won't change in the future. Perhaps it will. But yeah, I'm a little bit more conscious of looking at people's actions, how they do things, whether they don't do things,
Mm.
and being at peace with the fact that if people aren't willing to sort of be there and don't want to be, I'm okay with that now.
Mm.
You know, if you're not made a priority by somebody and then you are made a priority by somebody else, obviously you're going to put a bit more
Yeah.
time into the person who views you on a similar level to to yourself.
Do you think, has that come from a point where maybe you felt like you've only had got so much energy to give?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a big part, and funnily enough, it's something my mum used to say to me all the time, and you say it to me actually a lot, and other friends do as well, is that maybe it is a bit of a bad characteristic, and this is why I'm saying I don't necessarily think it's the best thing for me to get it back, but I always try and look for the good in people, even if maybe it's not there.
Yeah.
Don't I?
Yeah.
And you always say that to me, like, no, Laura, like, actually, in this situation, that person's actually just made a bad decision and haven't done the right thing, regardless of which way you look
It
at it.
doesn't mean you can't be forgiving, but I don't think you should make excuses for people
No,
either.
that's the difference, I think. And I think I'm a bit more pragmatic on that front now, where I just think not everyone's a bad person, but some people do make bad decisions, myself
Choices.
included, of course. But I'm less willing to sort of be like, oh, well, they did it for X, Y, Z. Now I'm a little bit more conscious of the fact that no, this is why it happened.
I just
And
think let people, give people the opportunity to tell you their reasons why they've done stuff.
yeah,
Because I think at times you've been had a habit of making excuses before they've even made an excuse for their action. It's like, well, let them tell you that's what they were doing. Because if
yeah,
they
yeah.
weren't, then you're justifying someone's actions before you've
Yeah,
even had a chance to
exactly.
ask them what their intent was. Because if their intent was bad, you need to know that.
Yeah, definitely. I do think I'm way more conscious of that now. And I think you're right, Shan. It's probably a result of losing mum. And also I'd say at the same time, becoming a mum myself, because you
Mm.
do have to be a little bit more,
Conscious of your time, but
yeah,
also who you're surrounding your kids with.
yeah. And there's a big thing at the moment, isn't there, that I've seen online. I think there's been quite a bit of discourse about it for a while, and I don't know if it's because I'm just on this side of TikTok at the moment. Um, but there's a there's such a thing as sort of low and high functioning families and
Oh,
friendships
okay.
as
I've
well.
not heard that.
And it's quite interesting. But it's sort of, and there's also low and high effort families and friendships. And everybody's got them. Everyone's got different versions of friendships where you'll all know who those friends are. You can spend hours with them and it doesn't feel like any time has passed. It's
Yeah.
easy, you can fully be yourself. You don't feel sort of like your social
I
battery's
feel like a
drained.
lot of my friends are like that. I need
Exactly.
that in my life. I need
Not all friends are though. And
no.
that I think that's the other thing, as you get older, you are a little bit more aware of, is somebody always going through a really difficult time? Is it always a drain of energy? And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's okay. Obviously, when people go through really tricky times and you want to be there for them as much as you can, but there are some people that are just
Sorry,
constantly
I'm not laughing. It's not
like
any of
that.
my friends, but I'm just thinking of a situation
I'm sure you are, sure. Many situations exist like this.
where I've
Um,
got people in my life who have friends that are like that. And I just think there comes a tipping point, and I do think it's based on your own energy and what you've got
and
to
tolerance
give, your
levels as well,
tolerance
isn't
level.
it?
Yeah, because you could
That
be friends for
changes.
15 years, 20 years, and now you've reached a point in your life where you're just like, I haven't fucking got the time.
And maybe that's the time when actually finally you're the person that needs the support,
Yeah.
but actually you still can't get it, because there are people that just by nature, it's not necessarily their fault, and quite often they don't have bad
No,
intention with
never
it.
have.
But
Not that
there's
I've
always
seen.
those people you sit in a room and you think, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
nothing's ever positive. And yeah, I think that's something I've been
Proper
looking
negative
into.
Nancy.
Yeah, basically, if somebody just like zaps the energy from a room. But yeah, I've been really conscious of the let them theory. That's something that's literally changed my life recently. I'm so much more conscious of that, and I'm like, okay, if somebody's going to do that,
Let them.
I'm not going to overanalyze it. I'm not going to worry about sort of what I did to get to that point, unless obviously there is something that I'm
Yeah.
very consciously aware of, and then I always like to think I take accountability and reflect on that. But
It is like I said to you last week, though, you're a very emotionally aware person. You're not someone that, um, when you could say I'm biased, but I think we've got a relationship where I could say to you, actually, look, sometimes you're not as emotionally aware. You are very. So you're always
try
aware of
to.
your, you're one of the people that I think are always aware of what they say, how they say it. They think about the way that they say things, the impact that it will have.
I worry about it for ages afterwards as well. I don't know if other people do this, but
Yeah.
where I'll have a conversation with somebody in the day and I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, like, why did I say it that way? Did they take that the wrong
Yeah.
way? Oh my gosh, did they think I'm a weirdo because I said that?" Um, but yeah, I think that is a natural way that
But
I
you're
am, but
also aware if you pick up quite well on other people's emotions and their energies and stuff like that. I think, like we said, you make excuses for people's actions, emotions, and feelings sometimes, but you are very aware of them. So I think
yeah,
for
it's true.
you, the let them theory works well because I think with some confidence, you could sit there and go, have I done anything that I would deem wrong or socially would be deemed wrong or rude or whatever? No, because I can rationalize my actions. I'm not a logical person. I can sit there and go, yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. Whereas for some
Mm.
people, I think that maybe aren't as emotionally aware, don't always see how their actions roll into somebody else's. So their
No,
version
yeah.
of let them doesn't allow them to take accountability for what have I done
It's
to
so
let them.
true, and I think as an extension of that, and this is something that I think I again, it's interesting because actually I don't necessarily think I want this back, but I'm very conscious of now, and myself. I'd like to think I don't do this because I am quite aware, like you say, of making sure I don't. But there's such a thing as being performative and actually offering support.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, especially in grief, everyone will know this, that's been through it, unfortunately, is you'll get lots of people that will say, "Oh, let me know if you need anything. I'm there if you need me." And sometimes that can be with very good intention, but quite a lot of the time, if it's people that are very close to you, say it's family or best friends, and nothing follows up on the back of it, it feels quite empty.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's
And
different.
do you feel like you've done that in time at times?
I don't necessarily think I have, but I've noticed I used to give a lot of people permission to do that to me.
Right,
I think
okay.
I'm a little bit more conscious of if I like to think I do this anyway, and of course I'll hold my hands up if this hasn't been the case. But I like to try and offer more specific things now because I know that's what helped us.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll say I'll take you out for a coffee sometime, and you can talk about your loved one that you lost versus, or just let me know whenever you need something, and then just never checking back in with that person because that kind of makes it look like that person cares and is there for you, but actually they've not done anything to action or to
Yeah.
show. Do you know what? And again, I'm
No.
not saying that this is. I don't think people always do this with bad intent. I genuinely don't. Some people just actually don't know what to do in this situation of grief. But I'm extending this to life in general, right?
Mm.
So you've all got those friends, for example, who if you didn't ever reach out to them, you'd probably never hear from them. It's a
Yeah.
similar thing. It's a
Yeah.
performative versus an actual sort of like a conscious or an intentional way of being there for your friends versus not. And I think it's the perception of the person, right? If you say, I'm there for you, I'm here for you if ever you need me, in your head you're thinking, oh, like I appreciate that person's there, but actually they still haven't done anything to be there for you. Do you see what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. They've just reached out a hand, but they've not actually like taken a grip of you or anything
Yeah,
like
and
that.
sometimes that happens on countless occasions, and I've seen scenarios of that with a friend of mine recently who she really needed somebody to be there for in her family, and she even expressed it to them and was really hoping things would change because she'd always been there for that particular
Yeah.
family member herself, and they kept saying to her, I'm always here for you. She finally asked for time and something that she needed from them, and she was essentially shot down for asking for it.
No.
So that, yeah, that's
Makes
where
me
I'm coming
sad.
from on the performative versus like the actionable sort of proof, I guess, that you care. So yeah, I'm way more conscious of that now, and I think if somebody says they're there for me or says they want to be and then they aren't, then now I'm just sort of like,
Mm.
okay, that's
Do you know what? I think I've
that's fine.
probably found a little bit harder though, maybe since going through like some really hard times, is asking, well, I don't think I've actually ever been good at it to be fair, but asking for support and like
Yeah, it's
help
really
and
hard.
stuff. But even with silly things, like I know you guys have said loads, like, is there anything we can do with the wedding? Is there anything we can help with this? And I find it really hard. Not because I don't think you guys would be like useful or helpful, but like adding any pressure to people for something that feels, and maybe I need to dig this over, not selfish, but like it being all about me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but don't be daft.
No,
Like,
but I don't know if
I get
that's,
where that's coming from, but and that's why I was saying before as well. Sometimes people do mean it with good intent, and then if you were to say to them, "Hey, will you take this on?" and they do it, that's different, isn't
yeah.
it?
Oh yeah, like like I've had to come to terms today, actually. I've sent a message saying I might actually need a little bit of help with this
She
because
did finally,
I
and you
feel
know we
like
would.
I'm like about to, do you know what it is? It's quite awkward. I feel like sometimes like planning a hen do and stuff like that, which is what we were talking about, it feels really weird asking people to celebrate you. I don't know whether that's
No,
just me. Hopefully it's
we
not.
would want to
I know
100%.
you would, but it's like getting a group of people together to celebrate me makes me feel a bit weird.
No, I get that because it's unusual, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's a
like
bit
I've
of
never
a
really had birthday parties or anything like
it's a bit
that
abstract, isn't it?
either. Like the most I've done was probably on more like one of the only times, which was last year, where I said, "Oh, let's go for some drinks of like a group of
Yeah,
people."
yeah,
But to be honest, that was just because I was lacking so much time that time of year that I thought I need to get everybody together because otherwise I'm
together.
not going to see any of you for my birthday. Um,
It was so nice as well.
yeah, we had a great time, didn't we? I was really hungover the next day. But yeah, I don't know. There's something about that, like I suppose me maybe being more aware of what's going on in other people's lives. Also financially, it makes me feel really uncomfortable asking people to spend money to come and do something with me. I don't know. I think there is something around the idea of like knowing now how much someone can be going through and maybe they don't vocalize it. And even though these are all people, my friends, my family, who I know most of the time, if something's going on, they will speak to me about it. I suppose I just don't want to add on to anybody's like
No, we wouldn't be
emotional
though,
debt, I
because
suppose.
it's an exciting time. It's a happy time, and like I said
Sorry,
before,
guys, I can't stop coughing. I'm trying to like hold it in, but I'm like, "Ugh."
you prioritize what's important, and
Yeah.
like, and I've said this to you before, and this is where I was saying sometimes it's like it's the intention behind what you do, isn't it? That's sort of really important. And as a one-off, obviously, sometimes people will say things like "I'll be there for you," and they do mean it.
Yeah.
But it's when it's continually happening and nothing happens on the back of it. But I think in that scenario, Shan, with you, like even being on mat leave right now, there's every bit of savings that I'd have right now would be towards making sure I was there for you.
I know, but that makes me feel
But
uncomfortable.
it's my choice, and it's something that I'd want to do for you.
Yeah, I suppose.
It's not because I feel pressure or I'm being forced into doing it. I want like if I didn't want to do it, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, you would though.
I would. But
That's the problem.
the
That's what the
the
problem is.
difference in this scenario 100% is you obviously you're my best friends. There's no way I wouldn't want to be there, but
The FOMO would be too much.
yeah. And I want to celebrate you, and I think it's important that you take it from that sort of outlook as well. Is that how many times in theory, touch wood, do you get
Hopefully
married
once.
in your lifetime? Hopefully it's
Hopefully
just the
once.
once. It's okay if it isn't though.
Yeah.
That's fine. Um
Sometimes you need a couple of times to
Sometimes
find
you
your
do.
prince.
Yeah, exactly. But we everybody that loves you and cares about you wants to be there, and
Well,
you'll
no,
see
no
that.
one's said anything. No one's even said like anything negative about it. But I suppose
You
it's
build
like,
it up in your head of feeling like you're adding
yeah, and I don't know if
pressure,
that's
yeah.
anything to do with the situation with like loss and like going through hard times or just maybe who I am as a person. But I don't know.
I
But
think it
it's
is from what you've just said though.
mm,
Well, there's a part that plays into it because you've said, haven't you, that people have so many other things going on in their lives. And I
yeah,
think particularly like you say with loss, all of a sudden everything sort of falls into insignificance, doesn't it? Especially
yeah,
if you're in the early days of it or you're going through a really hard time within your grief. It's quite all consuming, isn't it? So I
yeah.
think that 100% makes sense.
But like I don't think that's necessarily a bad trait to have, but I do think obviously it can make things hard sometimes in terms of the pressure that you then put onto yourself in
You can hold yourself back when actually you should
yeah.
be putting yourself forward is maybe part of
Mm.
that.
Mm.
Um,
Is there anything that you think you've got back that you're glad that you've got back in terms of in like the last like 2.5 years? A bit more than 2.5 now.
One of the big things that I really, really struggled with in the beginning, and I still do now, but I try and find some sort of peace or comfort in it, is any of the happy events or the milestones or the key things that
Yeah.
are going on in my life right now, particularly with the girls, actually, like given that, Sienna's 3 this year, which is insane.
Yeah, that's mad.
Um, I used to find difficult because I used to feel like I couldn't fully appreciate or enjoy them because my mum wasn't here. And I think sometimes that stops me from fully like
Being
appreciating
present.
and being present in what was happening, because everything, like we've said before on a couple of previous episodes, is that you can't really have a happy event without it being tarnished slightly grey. It's always a bit tainted because
Yeah.
that person you want to tell about that new thing that you've been through or accomplishment that you've achieved isn't there anymore. And I think initially that really shadowed a part of me being a mum, which
Yeah.
it really breaks my heart
Yeah.
because I couldn't really enjoy, particularly in the early days of Sienna, fully being a mum
Yeah.
because I was really
Like all them
poorly. I
firsts.
just lost my mum, yeah, and all of these amazing things were happening, and I feel terrible for it. At the time, I felt so guilty, but I can't truly 100% enjoy this. Whereas now, 3 years on, do I still get really sad when these moments happen and I can't share them with my mum? Of course I do, but I find a different way to channel it now. So I'm a bit more conscious of, I will still have my little chats with her, actually in the girls' room normally when I'm putting the girls to bed. I don't know why that is. I must associate it with my mum because I used to do it when Sienna was really small. I used to sit
Mm.
by the window and just think about her, and talk to Sienna about her. But yeah, I find ways now of being a bit more conscious of celebrating my mum and talking to her in some small way. I messaged her the other day on WhatsApp, obviously, she didn't get it. Well,
Do you
how
know what's
rude.
funny? You do that. I archived my chat with my dad. It's
Did you?
there, but I just can't.
I understand that though. I think that makes it's the same with like Facebook profiles and things like that, isn't it? But you either feel like it's a way to communicate or you feel like it's too hard to do that.
Yeah,
And
I think like I don't ever want to kind of scroll through my messages looking for
oh
something
yeah, of
and then be like,
course.
oh God, like that's because even sometimes if I type someone's name in and their first letter's like D or whatever, which my sister's name is Demi, so always my dad comes up as a contact, which is fine. But like I suppose on WhatsApp, it's more like I don't want it ever like
Yeah, I get
sideswiping
that.
me.
That's totally normal though. And it's interesting that, isn't it? Because I think people find different ways of comfort. And like I say, initially, I could never have done that. I couldn't have enjoyed any moment or really been fully present without thinking, why is mum not here to share this
Yeah.
with? And I do, 3 years on now, nearly, I do feel like I'm at a point now where I still share things with her in my own way, but I don't feel as consumed as I did do.
And what changed for you to be able to do that? I'm just thinking, like, if we're talking about like tips and stuff, like,
Yeah,
what was it that you did that you think changed that, or was it just time?
a big part of it was like the guilt element. I know my mum put me first her entire life, like all of us, the three of us, me, my brother, and my sister. And I started to feel like, how can I be the best version of myself again? How can I be the better version of what I was? How can I be the best possible mum that I can be to my girls? And how can I sort of channel those bits of mum into what I
Mm,
do today? Because I know I wasn't, and I'm conscious of not being hard on myself on this front, but I felt like I was letting the girls down a little bit because I was constantly thinking like, oh, I want to, I want to speak to my own mum, and I can't. It's
yeah.
the same with, like I said, with Mother's Day, is that it just doesn't feel, still feels very alien that she's not there.
Mm,
But then I think in my head, what would she have been saying? How would she have handled this? Like, what did she do when I had exciting times in my life, when I had difficult times, when I had troubles, and she was always there. She always showed up. She made sure she put 110% in every time. And I think now, I think, how can I be more like my mum?
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's just being,
Channeling her almost.
and still taking that time out to share stuff with her, but not letting it overshadow the moments that I should be enjoying for the girls.
Yeah. And for
Does that make
yourself.
sense? Well, yeah. Still not got to that point yet.
But that's it, isn't it? I think it's like it's really easy to kind of go, oh, here is this list of things you can do and like to get yourself back. But I think it's really comes from a place of listening to yourself, listening to your needs, listening to whether you think deep down that's something you really want back or whether you don't. Like I think it's okay for us to develop and change as people.
It
We're
happens organically as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Some of
like
it just
even if you hadn't
happens.
lost someone, there might have been something else that happened. Like maybe someone's been really appreciating you at work, or maybe it's a partner that's not been showing you that love and care and attention that you deserve. There could be so many significant events in your life that change who you are as a person. And I think sometimes with grief, we concentrate on how do I get myself back? How do I get myself back? And actually, I think from what I've taken from this episode is that more than anything, there's parts of us that we're glad that we've left
More,
behind.
I actually think now we've talked about it. In my head, I was thinking I was loads of stuff I wish I could have back again. And actually, there's more that I'm more conscious of now because of, almost
Yeah,
living for that person that was your significant loved one that you do more of. But I also do think though that when you go through loss, you're always thinking about what would life have been like, or what
mm,
version would certain of events looks like if they were still here
mm,
as well. So I do think that does impact you for a very long time, if not in some small way or some big way forever, dependent on what
yeah,
the situation is. Um, but it's even down to like the physical stuff, isn't it? Like we've said before, like I really struggled to sleep when I first lost mum. And I know some people
I was the same.
would
Yeah,
probably relate to that, and other people would say they needed to sleep more because it's so
yeah,
exhausting, isn't it?
yeah,
Um, and yeah, even just from that point of view, I think you've got to find a way of figuring out what will help you heal.
mm,
And there isn't like a set rule book on what that looks like necessarily, but there are times when you'll think, oh, things will never change, things will never be different to what they are today, but 3 years on almost, and 2 years and a bit for you, Shan. I think we're both in a position where actually things are still in some ways really hard, but in other ways they've changed and improved.
yeah.
So
Some things for the better, and I think that some of the most difficult stuff that you will have to contend with when like you change as a person is there will be pressures from certain individuals that might want you to go back to a version of yourself, but actually maybe that version of you isn't the best version of you to go back to. But naturally, if you've got partners or friends, they might see a difference in your behavior, and maybe your behavior doesn't benefit them as much anymore. And some of
mm,
these realizations and changes have meant that maybe you are a little bit more like, well, I don't want to go there. So I don't really want to do that. I don't want, I don't want to keep
not being a yes person.
yeah, I don't want to keep
Mm.
feeding into you and getting nothing back. And I do think it can certainly have those revelations. Like you see it a lot, like when parents unfortunately lose a child, they end up splitting up. And I think that does come from a place of sadness, but I think it's also coming from a place of addressing a lot within your relationship and some of the changes that you make that your partner's then like, actually, I don't want that, or I liked it when you did everything I said you needed to do rather than you making your decisions for yourself. So that is something that I think is important, that sometimes there is pressure from outside of, oh, you've changed. Well, changing is not a bad thing. Like changing can be positive for everybody
And it's
involved.
like loss is life changing. There's
Yeah.
no way of looking at it other than being conscious of the fact that a big version of you will be different.
But I also like I remember having this conversation with my sister-in-law where she was talking about like 3 or 4 months in after losing her dad, like she just felt like a complete different person and she still wasn't bad. And I said, I just think, if anything, if I had passed away and everyone was over it within a couple of months, I'd be
Fuming.
fuming.
Excuse
Like,
me.
I'm not being funny. Yeah, your life should change. I was a huge part of your life, and now I'm gone. Like, it's almost like that's the way from me, I suppose I kind of make it a little bit comical in my head of like, um, justifying that it's okay to still not be, back to where I want to be or in a headspace that I want to be in. But yeah, I just think, you know, put some respect on their name. Be sad for a bit.
I
Like
get that.
it's
I
that's just part of, I suppose, in some way honoring that. Like that's how I found it. And I think it's okay. We all deal with stuff in different ways, right? Like if you're not blubbering all the time, that doesn't make you a bad person. But
It's just the way that you process things,
yeah.
isn't it? And I tell you one thing that I do wish I had that I don't have now, though, having thought about it, is I still don't think I used to be really carefree, I think.
Mm,
When I think back, I just used to be a bit more spontaneous, be a little bit more
I do think having kids takes that away from you, though.
yeah, potentially. And I do still think, oh, like I try and be like, oh, just book the trip now and do this. And in my head, I'm still trying to fight with the idea of
I think I'm more like that.
I am in some ways, but then I think I'm a little, I don't know, I'm a bit more conscious of being sensible about things now, which I wasn't before, as you know. Like I used to be a bit
Mm.
like
Yeah, I think
just
I've gone
very,
the opposite
very
way.
blasé about
Whatever
stuff.
you've taken, I've gone, nah, fuck it, you only live
Yeah,
once.
exactly. And in some ways, like I say, I am conscious of it, but in other ways, I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. And, oh, what if this happens to me tomorrow? When I do think you do get a bit of a
Yeah, you're
fear.
worried about having regrets.
Yeah, you get a fear of regrets. You need to be a bit more sensible because suddenly you've got two little ones that depend on you. And I think, I do sort of, I've always second guessed things, as you know, like I'm a bit of an over analyzer, but yeah, sometimes my decisions now are sort of focused more on the negative outcomes than the positive ones, which isn't really me.
No.
Um, yeah, so that's something that I am very much aware of, and in some ways, I'm hoping that'll be a good thing eventually. But right now, there are still times where I think actually I shouldn't be bothered about that. But
Yeah. Take each day as it comes. I think it's like a
yeah,
natural, that's not a bad trait to have because I think it makes you a critical thinker. I just,
it's not me though, is it? That
no.
is a part of me that I've lost, and like I say, I don't necessarily think in the long term it'll be a bad thing. But I think right now there are days where I just think, oh Lord, like just get over it. Just let yourself just have that moment.
Yeah,
Just
I
do
think it
this.
depends
And
how much it's impacting you. I don't think it's a bad trait to have. I just think if it's
if it's holding you back, it's
holding you
obviously not
back,
a
if
good
it's
thing.
suppressing you, then maybe that's something you need to like adjust. But there's definitely parts of me that I've got back in terms of like, again, I think it's very like short term stuff, which is why I've not gone on to it. But I definitely had like major brain fog, just like a delayed reactions and responses. I'm a very, very quick thinker, as we know, too quick. There's always those going on in my head, and I struggled with like a long time after dad.
Procrastination's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I do procrastinate, but like just even when I first went back to work, and I just felt like my brain was triggering at like half speed. I couldn't process things as quickly. I couldn't do things. People were talking to me, and I was
You daydream, don't you, a
having,
lot when you
yeah,
first
and just
lose?
like digesting information, just everything took longer. And I think it was just because my brain was so, almost like stunned by um everything that had happened. It wasn't
Feels like you're in a
able to
movie though, doesn't it? I always
yeah,
just, like when you're a
slow
kid and
motion.
you have those like funny moments where you pretend that you're in a music video when you're on the train and you listen to a sad song or something.
Yeah,
It feels a bit like that, but real
yeah,
life, doesn't it? You were
yeah,
sort of
Truman Show type things. Yeah.
yeah, where you're a little bit sort of thinking, how does that happen, and how and this is maybe one of the things that I'm more conscious of now is that life is so fragile. Like it just is. There's no way
Mm,
of looking at that differently, I think, when you've lost someone. Whereas prior to that, I don't think you view life experiences, relationships, anything in the same way because you can't
no.
until you've been through loss. It really is just you just can't describe it to somebody who hasn't been through it. And if you do, obviously, naturally, they don't get it.
Get
And you
it?
wouldn't
No,
wish for anyone to get it. But,
no. But it's
um,
an important
yeah,
topic because I think there's like a lot, like I said before, I think there's a hell of a lot of pressure on like, I've got to get, and I definitely did it. Like, I don't feel like myself. How do I get back? Rather than maybe
you don't need to get
accepting,
that version back, do you?
yeah, maybe it's like a version of acceptance in that I'm changing and I'm happy. And if I want to go back to a version of that, then I can work on that, but it doesn't need to be overnight. And
And maybe
maybe,
you're not meant to.
yeah,
Is the other way of looking at it. I think, it is something that when you go through such a traumatic experience, I suppose like your brain and your body and just everything about you
it's fight
has
or
to
flight. Yeah.
adapt. Yeah. Um and you can't just go back to the version that you were, because your life, your world, everything that it was before isn't the same.
Yeah. I suppose it's
So,
like unlocking a like vault full of information that you didn't have previously. You can't just ignore that. Your brain learns from experiences and information, and this is now unlocked a load more information that means that you changes the way that you think. It changes the way that you process. It changes the way that you feel realistically about a lot of stuff,
so
and it's impossible
100%.
to forget that and go back to sort of before you knew all of that information. So yeah, I think that it just needs to come from a level of acceptance that like if you're going through a hard time or you've lost somebody, you are going to be different. There will be parts of you that you get back, and there will be parts of you that you lose forever, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that there's, like I said, there's not any part of my personality that I've lost that I'm yearning to have back. There might be people in my life that might go, she used to be different, or she used to do this, or she used to do that. But the ones close to me, I think, would probably say, if anything, grief has been the hardest thing I've ever gone through, but it's probably made me a better person.
Yeah.
And same for
I
you.
I'd agree with that. Although I think just with obviously me venturing into therapy, maybe this will be the catalyst to change for me. But as I mentioned with the whole loneliness thing, I've never felt that before. That's not a
Mm.
version of me that I ever thought would exist, because I've always.
Yeah, and I think that that's okay though, because like I just think that it exists because of the experiences that you've had, but I have no doubt that at some point, when you come to terms of why you feel that way and where those emotions have come from, they'll
Mm,
lead you to be, maybe doesn't necessarily be have to be a better person for yourself, but you'll be a lot more understanding of people that are experiencing it, because you can have empathy and sympathy for like
I hope
those
so, because I'm
emotions.
not a sad person, am I? But I definitely feel, and as I mentioned on the last episode, this is a newer thing. This is a newer part of my
Yeah.
grief. I think I just am in a headspace at the moment where I do feel
I would argue that you
sad,
keep
I guess.
relating it to your grief though, and I'm not sure it's all coming from there.
Yeah, it's maybe like just it's a contributing factor ultimately. But as I said to you the other day, Shan, for me, I'm at a point now of my grief where my brain is doing this weird thing where there are days when I think, did my mum even exist? Like it
Yeah.
feels like she was a figure of my
Yeah.
imagination, like.
I wonder if that's like a bit of disassociation
Because I
though,
can't.
like
So there are some days now where I still think mum's having a brew at home.
mm,
And I'm doing that a lot more at the moment than before. I was sort of like, I know mum's not here. And
mm.
obviously, I still know she's not. I'm not completely losing my marbles, but
Somebody call the police. I'm
but
joking.
isn't that strange? Like this, at this point
Yeah.
in time, I'm sort of starting to almost
I
like
just
regress
wonder
a little bit. So
I almost wonder if like because you've got so much going on in like your current life,
yeah,
whether
she'd be the person I go to, right? She'd be the
yeah.
person that'd be like, let me take stuff off your plate, let me do stuff for you, let me
I was
this and that,
That's
and
true, but what I was also gonna say, like, I feel like because you never really park your grief, it just becomes like part of who you are, and you just get used to carrying it all the time. Maybe because of all the stuff that you've got going on at the moment, your like subconscious is almost saying, we need to make space for you to be able to deal with all of this crap that you're dealing with, and maybe it's easier just to pretend that you didn't go through that, or you
that
didn't
makes
lose
sense.
mum.
That makes
And it's
sense,
not
yeah.
necessarily like, I don't know whether they'll say that's they'll probably say it's a bad thing, but like I don't know, they might say that that's just the way that your brain's processing.
It's just whatever you need to do
Yeah,
sometimes, though,
it's
isn't it?
whatever
I
you need
am
to
a
do at that
believer in
time.
that.
And like obviously if you've not got training and tactics on the healthiest ways to do that, you just do what you kind of learn on the job, I suppose, in terms of how do I use this emotion, how do I process it, how do I make space to be able to deal with all these new things that I'm experiencing in my life after mum, as well as carrying grief. I don't think you've got space for all of it, and you're trying to find it somewhere, and maybe disassociating from the fact that your mum's passed away is where
That's
you're
so
grasping it.
true.
I don't know. That's just my take on it.
I
Like,
think
I'm not
no,
a
I,
therapist,
I think
but
you're probably like pretty fair with everything you've said there, because I've never done this before, but we spoke about this earlier, didn't we, Shan? In terms of, I feel like I'm thinking in my head a little bit more now about what conversations would I have had with mum, like what would she have said about this,
yeah,
like what things were unsaid that I wish I'd said. And one of the things that I think I'm going to give a try, which isn't something that I think will come naturally to me, but I think it might be worth a shot, is writing down
yeah,
things that I wish I
journaling it.
had been able to ask mum and say to mum, and just see if it helps.
Yeah,
And if anybody else has done that, please let me know what the
maybe write a
outcome
letter
was.
to her. Write a
Yeah,
specific letter to her, asking the questions.
because even just like, you do in general, don't you, just the day-to-day stuff. But I always think now, like, how did she do this when she was a Mormon? What would she have done in this scenario now with what's
Yeah.
happened with other stuff that's going on in my life? And for the most part, I've got a pretty fair idea of what she would say
Yeah, but also I think
for
don't
some things,
forget
but
that
not for
there's
others.
like a lot of friends and family that you could go and ask, like, what do you think mum would have done in this
Yeah, my gran's great for
situation?
that as well. She's always saying to me, "Buddy, I'll sort yourself out." Um,
Grandma Mary.
she puts me in my place, bless her. And I love her for it, because actually sometimes you need that, don't you?
Oh,
And she used to do it to our mum all the time, so I
yeah.
feel like, oh, here she is.
She's passing it down. Oh,
Yeah.
I've loved that episode. I feel like that was a nice kind of, I suppose, just a bit of a deeper dive into some of the changes. Like we say, we've done what's been good, what's been bad, like since we've lost our parents, but actually some of those like a bit more into that self discovery and self loss, like that you feel it's important to touch on it. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. We will be back next week without doubt. Either it'll be just us, or we'll have arranged for somebody to come on, so we're kind of just looking at timelines. But give us a follow, give us a like. If anything that we've said has like resonated with you hugely, please do let us know. And if you've got anything that you've lost and you've been glad, or you've gained back and you've got tips on how you did it, make sure you let us know and we can share it on our socials. But yeah, see you all soon.
See you soon.